Welcome to the Aromas Grange. We're really glad you're here. We would love it if more of you would sit in the front row so people are not talking to chairs. There's coffee and water and cookies and refreshments in the dining room. And this hall is celebrating its 100th birthday this year. And now the League of Women Voters and our friend Mary Ellen is going to take you through this evening.
So hello everybody, welcome, and I'm Mary Ellen Dick, and I'm here representing the League of Women Voters of Monterey County. And we have three people in the back working on sorting questions. We have Mary here in the front doing the timing, and we have our candidates, Joe Moses and Tina Nieto. So just for housekeeping, as I said, we're part of the league. We really would like some of you to become league members. There's papers in the back for you to sign up. And we're always looking for people not only who want to work on voter service and voter registration, but who like to work in organizations like this. The way this is going to work tonight is that we have these two, Joe, Mr. Moses, and Ms. Nieto, and they have pulled numbers to figure out what order they're in. So they're sitting. So Mr. Moses is going to speak first, and for the introduction, which will be 2 minutes, and Ms. Nieto will be able to then have her 2 minutes to do her introduction. Mr. Moses will speak first, then Ms. Nieto. Then the first question will happen, and Ms. Nieto will answer it, and then Mr. Moses. And then Mr. Moses gets the next question, is we're collecting questions, and for the sheriffs, we're looking for questions on the yellow papers, and green papers for the Board of Supervisors candidates, and then bring them to the back. We will only be using questions which are applicable to both candidates, and we won't be using any questions that are disparaging to either candidate. Mr. Moses, 2 minutes, please.
Well, as mentioned, my name is Joe Moses. I've been with Monterey County Sheriff's Office for 28 years. I started in 1994 after I graduated from Sacramento State University in Sacramento. I have done everything that you can think of in the Sheriff's Office. I've worked patrol, investigations, special operations. I did a stint in internal affairs, and currently I'm the captain in charge of our corrections operations. I have a $79 million budget that I'm responsible for, and 320 employees. That's both full-time staff and contract staff. So I also have experience throughout this entire county. I've worked in North County up here in Aromas. I've worked South County all the way down to Lockwood alone. I've worked Big Sur in Peninsula, Carmel Valley. So I have a good understanding of all the diverse communities that we serve here in Monterey County with the Sheriff's Office. I also have a good relationship with all of our leaders throughout the county. The Board of Supervisor members, I have a good relationship with them. The fire chiefs, the police chiefs, the mayors. I have a good relationship with everybody throughout this county because I've worked here for 28 years. First and foremost, for my platform, the safety and security of our neighborhoods and our communities. Making sure that our neighborhoods and communities are safe. And how are we going to do that? First thing is making sure that we have enough patrol deputies. Enough patrol deputies that we're not just going from call to call to call, but we actually have time to get out of the patrol car, interact with our communities, have relationships with our communities, get to know the business owners. That's the way that we're going to be able to make sure our communities are safe. The other one is school safety. I'm big on school safety. I've been a proponent of getting the school resource officer at Carmel, and I'm also been a proponent of getting the school resource officer at North County High. As sheriff, I'll be able to expand on that and have more influence throughout the entire county to expand our school resource officers. And the last one is maintaining the safety and security of our county jail. That is a big part of the Sheriff's Office. As I mentioned the numbers, that's over half of what the Sheriff's Office is responsible for, both in workforce and fiscal. So I look forward to talking to you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Nieto.
Thank you very much, and thank you for everybody who took time out of their evening tonight to come in and listen to us. Because I think that's important. I think it's important for our communities to be engaged with whoever's going to be the sheriff. But let me start to tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm running for sheriff, because that seems to be the question I get a lot from people. So I have 28 and a half years with a large law enforcement agency, and I actually took the job with Marina as the police chief because that's something that I wanted to do. I wanted to be a police chief. I love community policing. I love communities, and it was a goal of mine. So I took the job with Marina Police Department. I was hired as their chief 5 years ago. I was hired into an agency that wasn't fully staffed, and there were some issues with the agency, but the folks were great. The folks on the agency were great. And it's been a wonderful experience. My 33 and a half years with law enforcement have been a wonderful experience. I can't say that enough. I love the men and women that are in law enforcement. I also want to say that one of the reasons I'm running is your police chiefs actually asked me to run for sheriff. And when they originally asked me, I said no to them because it is a big sacrifice. And I know that because for the last 15 years as a law enforcement executive, I've had to sacrifice some of my personal time because I care so much about the community and putting my heart and soul into, community projects and making community safer. And then other people ask me to become a supervisor. And so, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my platform, but I just want to tell you that I'm here for the right reasons, and as your next sheriff, that I'm going to work really hard for your community and the rest of the communities up and down this county.
Okay, so the first question is, and Ms. Nieto, you're going to go first. What programs could be adopted to reduce recidivism for the county jail?
So thank you for that question. So when you're looking at the county jail and you're looking at recidivism, really what that means is that, look, there's a certain percentage of our population that tends to get in trouble a lot more. So as your leader, and this is something that I've worked a lot both in Marina, I want to say that I'm your post commissioner for the state of California, so I oversee policing in the entire state to look at our policies, procedures, our trainings, what we can do better, working with sheriff's offices, working with port, airport police, we oversee pretty much everything. But we really have to have some strong programs within our jail system that people have a safety net when they come out, that we're taking care of their needs while they're in jail. And there's a couple of good programs already going on. I just want to give kudos out to Charles De Silva and Jim Bass, who really push those programs to bring them to our jail. The only thing that I would say that I would do better as the sheriff is that when there's best practices in our county, why didn't we do them sooner? Because these programs have been out there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Moses?
Yes, as captain in charge of the corrections operations, I run the county jail. When I started 4 years ago, went back to the jail from patrol, we had a handful of programs in the jail. Today we have 38 programs that we've established. Charles De Silva does deserve the credit, but I was the one that allowed him to bring those in and supported him in making sure that we had those programs available. And what that does is it provides our inmates. I believe that while you're incarcerated and serving your time, you should be held accountable. But while you're there, what tools can we give you to be successful on the outside? So that's what we do. We make sure that we give those tools through these programs, educational, vocational, parenting classes, and then we also work on that re-entry services, making sure that they're connected when they do get out so that they don't fall back into the same routine of re-incarceration.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Moses, you're first on the next question, which is, are you for or against a civilian oversight board for the Sheriff-Coroner office?
1 minute, huh? Civilian oversight is something that we need to make sure. I support having oversight of all of our elected officials, absolutely 100%. But what we really need to look at is how much oversight the Sheriff's Office already has. We have Sheriff's oversight from the state, from the Bureau of State Corrections. We have DOJ, Department of Justice, that oversight. We have the grand jury that has oversight. So the real question we need to ask, and this is the question that I asked our Board of Supervisors members when I met with them individually about this, is what is the final result that we're looking for? What are we missing? Are you not getting enough information? And if the Board of Supervisors are not getting enough information, is there already a mechanism in place? If there's not, and there's a decision is made that we go ahead and have an oversight, I would support that. But we really need to look very closely at that before we make that decision.
From the very beginning, I've stated that I actually support oversight. Why? Because as a chief of police, I can tell you, if I don't do my job, I'm at will, they'll let me go. And so the reason I support oversight is many of the programs that my opponent just spoke about, they actually don't have any power to do anything except either say, this is bad, please fix this, or sanction the sheriff. And so I support oversight because if you do it right, oversight actually gives them power to subpoena records, to look at things that might be wrong with the jails. And right now we don't have that in our jail with this current system. I work with oversight with the agency that I came from, so I'm not afraid of oversight, and I think people should be held accountable to the community. And so, yes, I support oversight, but I also agree that it has to be done right for the taxpayers.
Thank you. Okay. Next question, Ms. Nieto. If elected, what single success would you like to achieve in your first year?
Well, you know, I've talked about it, is that we need to be laser focused on getting out of the Hernandez settlement. And the Hernandez settlement, very quickly, because I only have a minute, has to do with the medical needs of our incarcerated population. Look, we continue having people dying in our jail. We continue to have food, hunger strikes. There's issues that the community's not finding out what's happening in our jails. And so if we don't fix this problem because it's the right thing to do, it's the humane thing to do for our incarcerated population, and quite frankly, it's costing you as taxpayers millions of dollars without being out of it. So, you know, my first year, if I could get us to meet the mandates of the Hernandez settlement, that would be a huge success, because then I could start adding more deputies to the field to deal with other issues that are occurring up and down our county.
Thank you. Mr. Moses.
Well, to start with, there's more than just one area that we're being evaluated on. There's actually 5. I know that because I've been working with the Sheriff's Office. I understand the jail, and I've been working in the jail. But my number one thing in my first year is to expand our patrol services. We need more deputies on the street. We need to expand that school resource officer program to make our schools safe. We just saw what happened up in Oakland yesterday. It is a high priority, and that's what I'm going to concentrate on, is making sure that we have enough patrol deputies in the streets to build that relationship and make our communities safe. How are we going to do that? One of the things that I will do is I will bifurcate the patrol from the corrections. I'm going to hire deputies for corrections, and I'll separately hire deputies for patrol, and that way we'll be able to build up our numbers a lot faster, and that's my first priority for the first year.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Moses. Who are the major contributors to your campaign, and which of them are from outside of the county?
I've had donors from all over the place, all over this county, from all walks of life, all different political spectrums. So a very, very wide variety of people that have donated to my campaign. I'm trying to remember the number that I had. I think I had over 500 people that donated to the campaign. There were some from out of the area, but those were family members that have supported me. I have some people from down in Los Angeles that gave me a donation, but they're family members.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Nieto.
So my major contributors, I guess, is the people that write the bigger checks have been people within the county. But I've had monies written to my campaign that help me, who believe in what I'm trying to do, who believe that there needs to be change in the Sheriff's Department, both up and down this county, on both ends of the spectrum politically, because I've always been that leader that believes in public safety, and people know that. And no matter where you fall on it, people want, you know, safe communities, they want a roof over their head, they want food on the table, and they know that I'm that type of leader. Several of my checks were written from Los Angeles, though, were from business owners in LA, because as the commanding officer there, I did the right things, and they know how I made safer communities. So even coming up to Monterey, they've supported me in my run for my campaign. My family doesn't have that much money, and although they don't all live here in this area, they've not written that many checks because I come from a poorer family.
Ms. Nieto, how would you respond to residents in the North County who say they are not getting their fair share of the Sheriff's Department's attention?
So first of all, one of my campaign promises, and I've been very consistent through my entire campaign, I didn't switch out what I believed in and about community safety, looking at the numbers. Nothing's really changed except I've got a lot more people endorsing me. And so I really believe in collaboration. I need to be talking with your next supervisor, who they're sitting in this room because there's only 2 people, and so one of them are here. So I need to make sure that we're talking about what's best for this community here in Aromas, Paro, and the north end of our county, to look at what what programs work and how the Sheriff's Office can be part of those successes to make those programs work.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Moses.
Well, once again, it comes down to making sure that we have enough patrol deputies to actually work the entire county. With almost 4,000 square miles to cover in the county area, it's rough when we're low on resources. And so we need to do a better job on recruitment, make sure that we get people filling out applications, quality people filling out those applications. And we need to target our younger people that get them interested in a career in law enforcement. It's a little rough right now. Across the board, I think a lot of our businesses are having a tough time getting employees. The Sheriff's Office is no different. And we need to make sure that we target people that want to work in this career. We need to advertise ourselves as a good, viable career in some place, Monterey County Sheriff's Office, where you want to work.
What, if any, changes in the hiring and training of Sheriff's Department staff are needed immediately?
Well, I just hit on that. It's about recruitment. It's about making sure that we are appealing to the next generation that's going to take our place. It's tough right now, as I mentioned, but by going through and hiring somebody, maybe that's 25, 30 years old, that has a degree in marketing, that understands the next generation, and we can reach out to them. We can reach out to them through social media. We have that opportunity now for the Sheriff's Office to market themselves through social media, through the media, through our relationships, being open and transparent with their communities, and showing that, again, the Sheriff's Office is a great place to come and work. That's the number one thing we need to start doing a much better job of.
Thank you. Ms. Nieto?
Well, I've only got a minute, but I can tell you the culture needs to change at the Sheriff's Office. Because deputies and the people that work there, the professional staff, are actually your best recruiters for any agency. I know that because I'm a chief of police and I'm always trying to hire people. I'm very proud that we're one of the few departments that, is fully staffed and people want to come work for us. And that's because they talk to each other and they say, hey, is this a good place to work? Isn't it? It's a good place to work. Now, yes, you have to do certain things. You have to target, you have to market. There's complete studies with the DOJ, the out of the state's office that help sheriffs and police chiefs look at how do you structure this. But I got to tell you, if we don't do better with our sheriff's department, these young men and women are going to work elsewhere. And the other thing when it comes to recruiting is once we get there, they got to stay there. We're losing people because they're just not happy. Not everybody, but we can keep better people if they feel valued, if they feel like their leadership cares, if they feel like there's integrity in their leadership. And I got to say that I think that I'm that change that the sheriff's department needs.
Thank you. Okay. So, Ms. Nieto, is it possible to control loud party music? The Sheriff's Department seems reluctant to do so.
Well, it's not about controlling loud parties, it's about educating people, it's about having solid plans in place when you know these parties are. And I say that because I actually have experience from where I came where we dealt with similar issues in an area that was rural, that they would rent out houses because they knew that the response time was going to be slow. There's certain things that you have to put into place. I've talked about it in my Monterey County Weekly Answers about community policing. And the bottom line, when you look at community policing, you have to have certain problem-solving models. And I'm a proponent of the SARA model, and that's working with our community, working with our board of supervisors to create ways to combat these loud parties that our community is concerned about here on the North End.
The way we address these issues is through collaboration. We need to get the other agencies within the county involved. I've talked with Supervisor Phillips at length about this issue. We need to get code enforcement involved. The response can't just be from the Sheriff's Office. We have to work together. When we have the first occurrence and we have code enforcement out there with drones and they're able to identify the houses that are a problem, send them that ticket. Send them something in the mail on that first offense. Second offense, third offense, we up the ante. But what we really need to do, and I've talked to him about this, is making sure that it hurts the people in the pocketbook. If you get a ticket, it can't be a $40 ticket. It's got to be something that's very expensive so that they don't continue to incentivize having these loud parties here in North County. And when the Sheriff's Office needs to get involved, then we need to jump in and we will get involved with making sure that the noise ordinance is adhered to.
Thank you. Mr. Moses? What is your stance on decertification of police officers?
Well, I believe that when we hire somebody and they are not fit to be an officer or a deputy, that they should not work in that field. They may be great people, they may be great bankers, or they might be a good lawyer, but they're not cut out for law enforcement. That doesn't mean they should have the opportunity to jump to another agency and try it again, right? There's a reason why we have gotten rid of somebody as a peace officer, and I don't think we should try to let them go someplace else. So I'm for decertification. One of the things that my opponent has done, we got rid of an employee, cut from probation for cause, and he is a police officer at Marine. So when we talk about decertification, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. We can't allow to happen. So I support decertification.
Thank you. Ms. Niet?
So I'm not quite sure what employee he's talking about. When employees are cut for cause, it may be because they just can't make their training. And there's obviously a culture at the Sheriff's Department that you have to be big and bad to pass training. And so you can talk to any of your police chiefs, and I'm not going to defend that about why they can cut. And my opponent sometimes uses those fuzzy words to try to confuse you, but I'd say tell me the specifics if you're going to bring it up, and be very specific about that. But I'm on your post commission, and I had to point out to my opponent yesterday that you already can decertify. He wasn't even aware that the law had passed. It's SB2, it was reported, so I'm not saying anything out of turn. But I do believe in decertification of officers. I'm your post commissioner. I'm working on that issue right now. It's a big issue up at the state, where I will be one of 18 people that can decertify officers across the state for the rest of their career.
Thank you. Ms. Niet, what ideas or solutions do you have for the use of illegal fireworks in rural areas, given the high fire danger during the 4th of July period, which includes 3 weeks before and 3 weeks after?
So I'm going to jump back. I'm going to answer these two questions, and it's going to take 30 seconds each. But I'm going to get back to the noise ordinance issue about the loud parties. And the Sheriff's Department needs to be part of that, because I've been part of programs where they just want to put it on code enforcement. Well, and they usually work Monday through Friday, and they're not in off hours, and the parties are usually Friday nights at 2 in the morning. So the sheriffs definitely need to be part of the solution. Getting to fireworks, we've tried different things. As the police chief, in fact, I have a meeting that's coming up this week, and all the police chiefs in the Monterey Peninsula are looking at ways of how we can deal with these fireworks issues, whether it's through drone enforcement, whether it's through changing our ordinances. But we have to do it safely, and we understand that this is a big issue with our communities, especially community members that own pets, because and veterans. There's a lot of trauma sometimes by listening to this during the evening. And so it is definitely something that is that we're working on. And I got to tell you, I don't have a solution on that one, because we tried several things, but we will continue to work towards trying to solve this problem.
Thank you. Mr. Moses?
Well, we do need to work in collaboration with our other agencies. Code enforcement should be involved in some of these things. It doesn't mean that the sheriff's office is passing the buck. Collaboration means we're working together, we're working hand in hand, side by side. To address, again, the fireworks, talking about using technology. We have technology out there. Drones is one way to do it. The city of Salinas has been battling this issue for a long, long time. They started using drones. They've seen a reduction in the amount of illegal fireworks that is being used around 4th of July. So that's what I would bring, is some of that technology, what Salinas City is doing. If it's working, let's try that up here in North County. Let's try this throughout the county to make sure that we cut down on this huge hazard. As I've been an incident commander on many of our large fires over the last 20 years, I know what the danger is. In fact, I was called upon by the state of California Office of Emergency Services to go up to the campfire when it burned through Paradise and be the incident commander to search about 1,500 structures at that time. So thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Mr. Moses, what is the role of punishment, deterrence, and rehabilitation at the county jail?
Well, the role, I mean, it's a huge part of what we do. My philosophy that I brought to the jail when I started 4 years ago was, again, holding those people that need to be held accountable for their actions, but at the same time giving them the tools to be ready to re-enter into our community and to be successful. So I talked about those 38 programs that we've started in the Monterey County Jail. We have Office of Education coming in. We have the Hartnell College that comes in with those courses. We do a lot of mental health courses, classes, and we also started a lot of other programs dealing with mental health, which I think is a big issue that we're facing, a big crisis we're facing in our community today. So the county jail has a huge influence over these people and this subject matter.
So the county jail should not be in the business of punishment, and let me explain what that means. We do house inmates. That's our job. Punishment is decided by our communities, and that's by the laws, and that's how they structure how much time they're going to do. Deterrence, again, if somebody's put into jail, that is a deterrent. That they say, if I'm going to do that, maybe I won't do that. And again, that's decided by communities, not by your sheriff. But rehabilitation, that's where the sheriff really can be involved. So once they're in our jails, do we provide programs to them that help them come back into our community, to be productive members in our community? And the bottom line is we need to treat them with humanity and respect. It's an incarcerated population. We all understand that, but they're still human beings with families. And we've got to do a better job of treating them with this kind of respect. And again, it gets back to, you can just read the paper of the issues that are happening at the jail. And I brought them up earlier. I mean, we continue to have people dying in the jail. They're going on food strikes, and they're not doing that just because they want attention. So I would really work on those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, Ms. Nieto, is Monterey County is increasingly more diverse. If elected, would you increase diversity among your staff to better reflect our demographics?
So we actually got this question last night at another forum that we're at talking about social justice, and I can tell you diversity does matter, because it matters to the communities. It matters to all the communities that we serve. But we have to look at what those demographics look like, and as your sheriff, it is incumbent upon me to try to recruit from the community, to bring people in that reflect our community. And it's not about color, it's not about sex, it's a diversity of thinking. Because different people think different ways, and so we want to bring that together, because if we keep just bringing in people that are the same, we never come up with answers to some of these really complex problems that maybe somebody a little bit different, might have that answer. And so it's very important for any sheriff, any chief of police, or any law leader in today's world to look at that issue of diversity.
Thank you. Mr. Moses.
Diversity is very important, and I will tell you, having worked in the sheriff's office for 28 years and now being a captain, that we are reflective of our community that we serve. We're doing a very good job on diversity. There's still work to be done, but we're doing a good job. Where we're lacking in diversity is in that upper management. We need to create pathways for everybody to have opportunities to move up the chain of command. When we talk about diversity, it is about bringing in different ideas. It's about bringing different perspectives, about bringing different experiences to the table, to the decision-making table, so that we have those ideas before us and can make come up with solutions that we need to make. So it is very important, but we also need to make sure that we are hiring and promoting the right people.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Moses. As a corporate sheriff, as a county sheriff, what does community policing mean to you? And what, if any, changes related to community policing would you implement?
So community policing means to me getting out of the patrol car and building a relationship with our communities. Getting a school resource officer into our schools to actually build a relationship with our young people. Have those kids see the person behind the badge and learn that we're the good guys. We're there to help them when they need help. That's community policing. Knowing your businesses. And since we have such a huge county and we're such a diverse county, what might work in King City might not work in Pebble Beach. So we have to look at that diversity, we have to understand it, and we have to gear our decisions and how we police in these different areas, in these different diverse areas. So making sure that we're getting out of the patrol cars, building those relationships, keeping deputies in their beats for a while so they learn who their community is.
Thank you. Ms. Nieto.
So community policing is so much more than just getting out of your car and a deputy getting out of your car. Community policing is actually an entire philosophy This is something that comes from law enforcement. Law enforcement leaders talk about it all the time. There's papers written about this. I wrote about it in the Monterey, or I talked about it in the Monterey County Weekly, because community policing means a very specific thing of how you police in your communities when you use those words. And it's not just getting out of your car. It's looking at the organizational structure. It's looking at who do you partner with to look at problems. What problem-solving model are you looking at, whether it be noise or chickens or loud music? How do you solve these problems? It's an entire philosophy, and I would encourage the viewers and the people that showed up tonight to just Google it. It's not just about getting out of your car.
Thank you. Ms. Nieto, what are the 2 or 3 main root causes of criminal behavior? What would you do as sheriff to see that they are addressed?
So this is a better question for our psychologist because if you look at the studies, and I've been in this business for 33 years now, and if you look at even just how policing's changed, they've looked at criminality from different aspects. But I got to tell you, there's a lot of socio-economic things that drive our numbers. If you look at how the crime waves over the last 3 decades go, there's certain crimes that go down, certain crimes that go up, depending on what your law enforcement is doing, depending on if people have jobs, if they have housing, depending on how many homeless you have. There are so many things that go into criminality. I would bore you to death. I could talk on that for the next 2 hours if you'd like, and I'll stay if anybody wants to really dig deep into what the root problem or causes of crime are.
Thank you. Mr. Moses.
Well, I agree. That's a subject that could take a long time up here. What I see, though, is really, from talking with a lot of our inmates in the jail and people on the street, a lot of it has to do with their role models, making sure that we have good role models. Again, I'll go back to the school resource officer, why I think it's such an important part, is because some of those kids do not have good role models. Their parents might be incarcerated at the time, or they may be addicted to drugs or alcohol, and they have a real hard time finding that role model. And I see that our sheriff's deputies are that role model that we can provide for them and interact with them and take an interest in. But there are so many things that we can talk about criminality and why people turn to a life of crime and how we can get them back. I want to concentrate more as sheriff on how we can get them back, and then making sure that as they have children, that we don't continue this cycle.
Thank you. Mr. Moses, what can be done to remove barriers to successful re-entry for inmates released back into the county?
Well, we're doing a lot of that now. Like I talked about, we have a very robust reentry services program. We actually have people that are dedicated to making sure that our inmates, when they are being released, are released into, if it's going to be a program, if it's to their home. We're talking to them and having them fill out questionnaires and figuring out what their needs are, what their resources that they're missing when they get out. Is it a drug problem? Is it a housing issue? Is it, all those kinds of things. Do they need a job? And so we're trying to connect them with those resources once they get outside of the jail, and making sure that they don't come back. That is the for me, that's success. When we get somebody and we release them and they don't come back through the other door, that's a success, and that's what we concentrate on.
Thank you. Ms. Nieto.
Actually, in our criminal justice system, the sheriff sets up the programs they're going to go into. And then it's taken over by our county behavioral health, and there's other social services, the nonprofits, working with them that create the safety nets. And so those are really the peoples in our county that really have the most hold on whether somebody's successful to return to the jails or not. It's incumbent upon the sheriff to make sure that we are placing them in these things. But what I always tell people is the power of the sheriff's office, that we have to use it wisely. And when there's groups that aren't doing the things that they're saying, we need to hold them accountable. We need to advocate for stronger programs if they show successes. Because the power of the sheriff's office is a lot in this county, and you all know that. That's why you're out here tonight, to listen to the two candidates.
Thank you. Ms. Nieto, do you believe racial profiling by law enforcement officers occurs in Monterey County? How would you work to make sure that it does not?
So, ma'am, and the rest of you, I'm going to tell you this. It doesn't matter what I believe exists or doesn't exist. It matters what the public believes exists or doesn't exist. And that's what your sheriff has to deal with, is perceptions. And if the perception is something the sheriff doesn't agree with, then it's my job to talk to the communities, to find out, listen actively, why they believe this is happening. It's my job as the sheriff to put into places about making sure that if there is this perception or the sheriff's office is doing something wrong, that we fix those issues. It gets back to community policing that I talked about Sarah, using Sarah as a modeling. And quite honestly, in the state of California, we have RIPA, and we have a lot of training in unbiased and biased policing, so the training's already there, but it's about active listening and listening to your community and working on whatever that perception is to create a better perception of what our deputies are doing out in the field.
Thank you. Mr. Moses.
Yes, it does talk, it is about perceptions. And what are we going to do to make sure that we have everybody's perception in one room? One of the things that we've been doing at the Sheriff's Office is a program before COVID was going on, and now we're going to bring it back, is Why'd You Stop Me? A program where we bring deputies and people from the community together to talk about a traffic stop, talk about when we get called for service at your house. What is the perception of that deputy? What's the perception of the public? And learning from each other and building that. Also, getting out, I will create advisory council boards throughout the county, not just one, because it's going to take more than just one. I'm talking about having advisory boards throughout Monterey County so that we can get those perceptions of what's important to the community, what we need to talk about, what we need to address for each of the individual diverse communities that we have in Monterey County.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Moses. The Sheriff/Coroner Office requested a 2023 budget that exceeds $147 billion. What experience do you have managing a budget of this size?
Well, I mentioned in my opening that I am responsible for a $79 million budget currently with 320 employees. So as you can hear, that's over half of what the current budget is for the Sheriff's Office. It's actually $145 million that we were approved for the 2023. So that's the experience that I have. I also have a lot of experience of finding alternative funding sources. When I talk about a medication-assisted treatment program in the jail that we've started, a jail-based custody treatment program that we started in the jail, the Sheriff's Office airplane that we had, I got all of those programs and that resource without costing the taxpayers of Monterey County a dime. It didn't come out of our general fund. It came from grants, it came from private, it came from the state. So that's what I bring to the table. When we talk about budget, there's other ways that we can work around the budget so that we can make sure that we do the services that we need to provide that you have come to expect.
Thank you. Ms. Nieto.
So I've been a law enforcement executive for the last 15 years, and I've run large budgets and small budgets. And so I have a lot of budgeting experience, and I can tell you they've never given me enough money. But the job of the sheriff or the law enforcement leader is to try to make it work with whatever. And when it comes to budgeting, it's about establishing that relationships with your supervisor to talk about, hey, what do you really want? What does communities really want? It's going to cost as much as we do it. Not when you walk into the budget and say, here's my budget, please approve it, and then go back 6 months later and say, we need more money. And it was also, for the sheriff, it's really making sure that their budgeting team, because it's a team, it's not the sheriff itself, although they sign off on it, to make sure that the budgeting team has the right tools and the right training and has the support of the sheriff in order to create a budget that's realistic, that you can explain to the community and takes care of community safety. I too have gone after grants and other funding sources, and that's part of the processing when you do any budgets. If you can't meet it, do we do private, public, partnerships, or we go after grants to fulfill whatever mission we need to fulfill?
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Nieto. A bill is sitting on Governor Newsom's desk that would limit solitary confinement in California jails and prisons to 15 consecutive days and no more than 45 days out of 180 days. What is your position on solitary confinement? Would you endorse this bill?
So I'm not the sheriff yet, so that's going to be up to the governor, because at this point it's sitting on his desk. And so he has to sign it. As you all know, he had like 500 and something bills that he had to get done, and I don't know how many signed. And I was actually reading about it in the paper this morning, and I actually looked at the people that are supporting it and the people that aren't supporting it. And here's what I can tell you just from my research, because I haven't decided is that a good thing or a bad thing. Is that people think this is not humane to keep people in this, that it causes harm to the community. But then the people that are saying, no, don't sign this bill, are saying, well, this is the only sort of punishment, and the word punishment is used, that we can use to keep these certain inmates under control. So I'm not going to tell you that I don't get to make that decision. I think that we have to look at it, and I don't really know which direction the governor's going to go, and I don't think the Sheriff's Association either opposed it or supported it. And let me tell you, as a Cal Chief, we look at this legislation either support or oppose.
Thank you. Mr. Moses?
Well, again, with my experience with the Monterey County Jail here, I know that very, very rarely do we use solitary confinement, and it is not used as punishment. It's actually used as protection. So I would oppose this bill for that one reason, because there are people in our county jail that do not want to, and we would not be able to put them into a general housing area for fear that they will be killed. It is for their safety. And so if the governor signs this bill, it is going to limit our ability to keep people safe. And that's the only reason why I would oppose it. I do not think we should use solitary confinement as a punishment. It is not, we do not use that in Monterey County Jail, nor would I support using that technique for, to hold people, punish people. So, yeah, we have to make sure that we're able to keep our inmates safe. That's the biggest priority for the Sheriff's Office when we're talking about jail, is making sure our deputies are safe and making sure our inmates are safe. If we take away that tool, we're going to lose that.
Thank you. Mr. Moses, what is your position on no cash bail? Should ability to pay be considered when assessing bail?
I don't think that cash bail is a fair system. When we talk about people that have the means, if somebody gets pulled over, say, for a second DUI, and if you have means, you have money, you can bail out that night or that day and be able to go back to work, go back into the community, and hold your job. If you do not have the means, you are kept in jail until you're able to go before the court, which could be, especially if it's on a Friday night, it may not be until Tuesday or Wednesday next week. By the time you're able to get before the judge, and the judge now grants that you can be released, you may have lost your job. You may have lost your car because it got impounded and you weren't able to get it out. So cash bail, as it stands, is not a fair system. However, we don't have an alternative in place yet. So we have, before we get an alternative in place, we cannot get rid of cash bail. We have to work on that piece. We can't just stop, and then we have to have something in place.
Thank you. Ms. Nieto?
I actually support the bail system, and I'm going to tell you why I support the bail system. Because the way the bail system is actually set up, it's the judges that can release people. And I say that from my own experience. With Marina, we said, hey, no cash bail on a certain individual, and I can't get into the pieces of the case why we didn't want the gentleman to have cash bail. And there is compassionate release, so they can go in front of judges and say, hey, release me. Well, this gentleman was released and ended up killing a family in a DUI incident, and it was widely publicized. So I think that we can't create systems where people just get arrested and then are right back out on the streets with no sense of, there's nothing, it does not stop crime. And if you are really looking at keeping communities safe, is this the best way to keep communities safe? If your police officers, your deputies are arresting people, and before the paperwork is done, those folks are right back out in your communities. So do we need to do a better job? Yes, but to just get rid of bail, my answer is no.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Nieto. Should people with non-criminal behavioral health issues be locked up instead of placed in community-based treatment programs?
So I am somebody who's always supported alternative methods for people that need help because of mental health stuff. Unfortunately, though, we don't have a state mental hospital. That got rid of, the governor got rid of that back when I was a child. And so what happens is that your deputies, your sheriff's office becomes the last resort for people that are exhibiting erratic behavior. I'm totally in support of creating teams that go out and deal with these mental illnesses, so we're not locking them up. I've been part of I went up to the state to look at our veterans transition courts, to look at alternative ways to deal with folks that are having these issues. And I certainly support any programs that are alternative, what they call alternative sentencing, to put these folks into to solve the problem and not just, keep this revolving door of folks that need help in other ways ending back up in our lockups and jails.
Thank you. Mr. Moses.
Well, we actually do have state hospitals throughout the state, but they are so impacted it's hard to get a bed, which is one of the reasons why I'm going to bring a behavioral health center to Monterey County. When we opened our jail expansion in March of this year, we emptied a large portion of our old jail. And that gives us the real estate to work and build a behavioral health center. I've been working collaboratively with behavioral health. I've been talking with the state for funding. We actually got a grant to look at what it's going to take to overhaul that facility to make a behavioral health center here, because I do not believe that people should be locked up for mental health issues, and I see it every day. I see it every day when I'm walking the halls of the jail. We're trying to do our best to help those with mental health issues. We've started that JBCT program. We just started an early access program, which gives people the opportunity to get mental health treatment while they're incarcerated and before they go before the judge. We're starting the medication-assisted treatment program in the jail, but it's not enough, and it's not the right environment. So building the behavioral health center to create that environment is what we need to do, and that's what I will do as sheriff.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Moses, as the top administrator, what will you do when major incidents occur, such as an escapee from jail?
Well, interesting enough, I've had that opportunity. So when an escapee escapes from the jail, we immediately do a lockdown. If we know immediately, we're going to notify the surrounding area that we have an escapee on the loose, just like they do down at the state prison, and we are going to call in all the resources. When we had our last escape, we called in resources from the state, from the FBI, we had Border Patrol, and we were able to capture the people that escaped, and we caught them before they committed any further crimes and brought them back into custody. But that's what you have to have, a quick, rapid response. You have to have a plan in place, which we do, and we executed it very well and brought them back into custody.
Thank you. Ms. Nieto.
So the Sheriff's Department does have protocols and practices in place to do that, and we're going to continue to do that to me as sheriff. The difference is, though, is about the transparency piece that I've talked about throughout my campaign, and letting our community know, because communities shouldn't find out because somebody leaked it to the press. We should be talking to our communities about these issues so we can solve some of these problems, so we can get funding if it's a problem with the jail that needs a door fixed or more cameras, so they know about it. And our communities are not happy when they do read about it because it's been leaked, and that erodes the trust of the sheriff's office. And I can't tell you as your next sheriff that I'm going to release what I can legally in a timely manner, so that our community isn't in the dark, and then someone finds out that this happened and you were, they were in your community or something like that. So my promise to all the voters, my promise to you, to the future supervisors, that we are going to be talking and the conversation is going to be had, and not because it hit the paper.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Nieto, how do you create an environment that makes sexual harassment unacceptable? Training classes appear to be insufficient.
You're absolutely right. It really is about the culture. Again, I wrote in my answers to Monterey County Weekly, I talked about it. It is about a culture. It's about the leadership that you pick to be your leaders. I can tell you from the very beginning of my campaign that I said, I am not going to pick an executive team that doesn't share my values of honesty, integrity, transparency, and accountability. But the one thing I'm not going to do is announce who that leadership team is. And some people have taken swipes at me because they're like, well, it's going to be this person, right? So you must be wrong. So it really is about changing the culture. And it's zero tolerance. And zero tolerance means zero tolerance for everybody. And it doesn't mean I found out about it, it was reported, and so I knew it was reported. Everybody from the top, from the deputy to the sheriff themselves, has the duty to report when this happens and to take some kind of action. And so my people are going to know that. And because I surround my people that share that value, and because we're talking about it, because we're doing the education piece, that's some of the things that I'm going to do to help change the culture.
Thank you. Mr. Moses.
Well, it starts with taking a strong stand at the top. When this news broke, I took a very, very strong stand, saying, condemning the actions of the top leadership in the Monterey County Sheriff's Office. And I knew it was probably going to cost me politically a little bit, and it did. But I'm willing to take that stand. I'm willing to do what's right. My opponent, on the other hand, said that she would have to read a report from the Civil Rights Office to make the determination of whether or not she would keep a high-ranking official that was found to have been involved in sexual harassment. That's not the right message to send. My message is no, we will not tolerate that. When I got that information, I immediately said, I would never have that person in my emergency, my executive management team. And so we need to take that strong stance at the top so that everybody else in the agency understands that this will not be tolerated. How does it make people feel whenever we say, well, we're going to have to take a look at that report? No, the Civil Rights Office said no, there was wrongdoing, and that's what the action that we need to take.
And this is the last question. What can be done to reduce fees for those in jail who must pay for telephone access and food commissary? Is this system considered a source of income to the Sheriff's Department?
Well, that's a great question, and the state has already limited how much we can charge for telephone services. But the commissary, I want to talk about the commissary for a minute. That was the reason for the hunger strike at the jail. I said that we are going to limit how much commissary each inmate can have. It was at $900 per inmate per week of commissary they could have. It created all kinds of problems in the jail. So I said, we're going to reduce that to $150. Along with that, I'm also looking, and I will work with our Board of Supervisor members, of reducing the amount of money that we do bring off the top from our commissary sales. Right now, we're at the max that we can charge, which I believe is 51%. I would to reduce that down maybe to the 20 or 25%, if not get rid of it altogether. But it does fund a lot of our programs. That is where most of the funding comes for our programs. So it is going back into programs for our inmates instead of being used in our general fund. So I think that needs to be a distinction that is made.
Thank you. Ms. Nieto?
So my 1 minute, so I'm going to get back to sexual harassment. So my opponent has admitted, and if you read everything, it's first, I didn't know about the sexual harassment. Oh, then I did know about it from 2018. Oh, it was already reported. And I'm going to take a strong stance against the sheriff now, but I'll take his endorsement until you all find out about it. And I'm not just saying that. You can go back and read, you can look at the videos, and you can judge for yourself. As far as the commissary, it was at a low rate, and then it was decided to raise it. Because there are sometimes decisions being made in our jail where they don't look at unintended consequences. And I got to tell you as a sheriff, whenever you change anything that's going to affect a large part of your population, you got to think about what that may or may not cost. By increasing it to $900, it created unintended consequences. And so then it got reduced because now we have to fix it. Well, that should have been thought about before they went to increasing the numbers. And I can tell you as your sheriff, I am a critical thinker, and we're going to be thinking about our policies and procedures, especially when we change them.
Thank you. Now, this is the final sum-up statement. Ms. Nieto, you are going to go first, and then Mr. Moses. They get a minute.
Only 1 minute. Okay, so I encourage you to look at both myself and my opponent and look at the things that we said. I've been consistent throughout my entire campaign about community safety, about what's important to me, what my values are. I haven't changed through the whole campaign. I don't know if I can say the same of my opponent. He said I changed my marketing people or I changed my campaign manager, so that's why it's all different. You can talk to him about it. But I can tell you that I value honesty, integrity, accountability, and the people that I surround myself with, I'm going to make sure that we do that as your next sheriff. I'm going to think about the decisions that we make. I'm going to be collaborative You know, I'm gonna work with our communities and do the things that create safer communities, not just for North County, but for our incarcerated population, for North County, South County, working with your leaders. And finally, one thing I want to add, the people that work for my opponent, the sheriff's deputies and the professional and civilian staff, and every law enforcement agency that can endorse candidates have endorsed me. And so you have to ask your question, why?
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Moses.
Well, we just heard my opponent say that she didn't want to be sheriff. She was pushed to run for sheriff. 5 years ago, she came from LAPD. She retired from LAPD, came up to Marina. And she said at that time she was going to serve for 5 years as the chief of police in Marina, get invested in PERS, and then retire. And now she's running for sheriff. So how invested is she in Monterey County? I've been with Monterey County Sheriff's Office for 28 years, done everything that you can think of in the Sheriff's Office, and I'm committed to this county and to this position. As sheriff, I will do what's right by the people of Monterey County, and I'm running for Monterey County Sheriff for all the right reasons, and I look forward to your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody, let's give the candidates a big round of applause.